Hi, welcome to today's video. My name is Paul. So this week I thought maybe take a look at some of the struggles, some of the challenges we have when we're getting into art, getting back into art, or trying something different in art. It could also be that you've been doing art for a while but feel as though it's not going in the direction you wanted to go in, not making the progress you would like to make. So we have all of these challenges, and that's sort of the thing I would like to talk about in this week's video. Usual disclaimer, I'm not claiming to be an expert or have the answers. I might not have any of the answers, never mind all of the answers, but it's just sharing some of my experiences and some of my ideas. It may or may not be useful. So we'll start off, just get straight into it, start off with this quote. This is by Henri Matisse. Creativity takes courage. Sometimes I've seen it written as creativity requires courage. Either way, I guess the quote itself is open to some interpretation. It could mean slightly different things to different people. Slightly later on in the video, I'm going to come back to it and say sort of how I interpret this quote, what it means to me. So it's now almost exactly 5 years. It was March 2019 when I got back into art after a break of many years, a couple of decades maybe. At that time I had a few old art materials lying around, especially some old acrylic paint. Most of it was beyond use. It had sort of solidified inside the tubes. Some of it was kind of okay. So I tried an acrylic painting. It didn't really work out, and I'd sort of remembered then that I had this sort of love-hate relationship with acrylic paint. I wanted it, I wanted to like it, I wanted it to work for me, but I just couldn't get it working. So I thought, well, either I try again, which means I have to go out and buy some acrylic paint, or I could try something different. I decided to try something different, some watercolor painting. And I did some watercolor landscapes. After a couple of years, that was all going okay, but I wanted to add something else in, a bit of variety. So I decided I would like to do people in sort of urban landscapes. One of the watercolor artists that I liked, although my watercolors are completely different subject and everything, I liked his style of doing watercolors. That's this guy whose name I can never remember. Alvaro Castanet, something like that. I probably just butchered it. Spanish name. I think he's Argentinian, although he might live in Australia these days. Anyway, I liked his watercolors, and I found that he did some charcoal drawings, like the one on the left, the charcoal sort of urban landscape. And I liked that, and I thought, well, I could have a go at doing something like this. To get some charcoal, some paper. The great thing about charcoal is it's one of the cheaper art materials, one of the more affordable ones, and it's not fussy about the paper that you use. You can use charcoal with lots of different types of paper. So I thought, I'll try this. If it doesn't work out, well, it doesn't work out. It's not as though I have to spend huge amounts of money to try. So I tried it, and surprise, surprise, it didn't work out. And I tried again and again and again, still couldn't get it to work. And I was kind of at that stage sort of copying what I could see, the few examples I found of his charcoal urban landscapes. So as I say, didn't work, became a bit frustrated. And at that point I thought, well, maybe, what are the options? So option number one is to give up. Option number two is to figure out what the problem was. And the problem was basically my drawing skills were not up to his level. So that would require learning to draw to a higher level. How long would that take me? I think realistically we're looking at years. Some people can maybe do it in a few months. I can't. It's going to take me years to get to that level. So that option didn't seem that appealing to me at the time. Another option was to try something completely different, a completely different approach. which appealed to me a lot more than the first two. So I decided to look around. This guy is not the only artist in the world. There are lots of other artists out there. So I decided to look around at other artists who also, painted, drew people in urban settings. And didn't take long to find a few examples. And these are some 3 different artists that I like, who all did urban sort of landscapes with people. So top left, the first 3 drawings are by the French artist Georges Seurat. He's sometimes referred to as a post-impressionist or a neo-impressionist. He was around in the latter half of the 19th century in Paris. He was influenced by Impressionism, and he's famous for doing that sort of divisionism or pointillism style of painting, the lots of little coloured dots. But his drawing style was also kind of unique, or at least quite different from what a lot of other people were doing. And you could see over the years how his drawing style developed. Top left is one of his earlier drawings, and it's kind of standard. It uses some lines and values. Same with the one on the third one on the right, the middle sort of right. But it's the other one which relies purely on values, and there's no lines really used in it. And I liked that sort of style of drawing. It was interesting. And he did a lot of people in sort of urban or suburban landscapes. So that opened up some new possibilities, different ways of drawing, using values, not just relying on lines plus values. Another artist, and you can see top right and also bottom right, is an English artist, Lowry. And Lowry lived, I think, in the north of England, and he was inspired by what he saw in those big urban sort of industrial cities in the north of England. Lots of coal mines, lots of cotton mills, things like that. And he was inspired by the sort of working class people who lived in those areas. And he had his own sort of unique way of drawing people, sometimes called his little matchstick people. But again, different style, different approach, and it was opening up this idea in my head that, there's lots of different ways of approaching art. And yes, the technical stuff, learning to draw like the first artist I was inspired by, you can go down that road, but that's not the only way to go. So maybe there were other possibilities open to me. This guy Lowry, I don't know how famous he is outside of England, maybe not so much, but he is well known in England. So he was a successful, quite famous artist. The other 2 then, on the bottom row, these are by another artist. Her name was Joan Erdely. Again, English artist, but she's sometimes referred to as a Scottish artist. She went to Glasgow School of Art, in the city of Glasgow in Scotland, and I think she spent the rest of her life working in Scotland. So she's sometimes referred to as a Scottish artist. And she's mostly famous for doing landscapes, sort of semi-abstract landscapes, which I'm a huge fan of. But before she really got into that, while she was at art college and soon after graduating, she did a lot of drawings, pastel drawings and paintings of young children in the city of Glasgow in Scotland, particularly children from more deprived areas, poorer areas, working class areas of the city. And again, very different style. So basically what I'm saying is, I was faced with this failure, this inability to copy someone else's art, but then sort of expanding the influences and understanding that there's lots of different ways of making art. It opened up new possibilities for me, and it opened up the idea that the way I drew was okay. It wasn't technically advanced. It might even be described by a lot of people as ugly, but it was my way of drawing. And that was a huge, it might not seem like very much, but it was a huge sort of revelation to me that art can be lots of different things. And there's lots of different approaches, and they're all equally valid, in my opinion. So these were some of the drawings in that I was doing, and basically I learned to just accept, to even love the way that I draw, because it is my way of drawing. And it may just be chicken scratches to some people, but to me it's the way I draw, and I'm not going to change. So I started doing these little sketches of people, and I'm still doing them, and I'll show you in a minute or two some of the more recent ones. But I say style, you know, there's lots of different styles. So for example, John Bider, I think that's how you pronounce his name, on the left, he worked in advertising, as far as I know, in New York City. But from quite an early age, he became interested in photography. He went out, he took photographs of small towns in America. He was particularly interested in older cars and diners. So old-fashioned style diners, I guess. His style of painting then is photorealism, because, you know, if you didn't know, the one on the left is a painting. I'm not sure if it's oil or acrylic, but it's a painting. But it does look pretty much like a photograph. So photorealism. Some people call it hyperrealism. On the other hand, on the right-hand side, Jackson Pollock, who, an artist, famously wasn't very good at drawing, but he developed this style of painting that worked with the skills that he did have. And some people might say, well, what skill is involved in that? When you look at the one on the left, there's obviously a huge amount of skill. You have to learn how to control the brush to get all the perspective, proportions, all the different colors. You have to learn how to mix colors to get accurate colors like that. And that's all true. It's all based on technical skills. It's very much art as a craft, if you like, a technical craft. But the Jackson Pollock painting, okay, you don't need those skills. It doesn't require those skills, but it does require other skills because, and if you don't believe me, try creating a Jackson Pollock style painting. It is not easy. Yes, you can just fire paint onto a canvas and see what happens, but Jackson Pollock didn't do that. His paintings are balanced, there's rhythm, there's harmony in there. The compositions are interesting and dynamic. And that requires skill as well. It's a set of skills, but it's still skills. The photorealism, there's no creativity, there's no originality, there's no individuality in those paintings because you're just recreating what's in a photograph. Every little detail is just recreated in the painting. So it's completely devoid of any creativity or originality. Whereas the Jackson Pollock painting is nothing but originality and creativity. There is no reference to work from. It's coming out of his head. So yes, photorealism, that style of painting, requires a huge amount of skill and talent and patience because it takes a long time to create these paintings. But it lacks other artistic skills like imagination and creativity, whereas the Jackson Pollock painting is based entirely on that creative, imaginative approach. So at this point in my development as an artist, I guess, I came to that conclusion that there's many different approaches to art, and it's not that one is right and one is wrong. They're just different, and they rely on different skill sets, and they result in different styles. And some people like one and some people like another. And in between these two styles, if you think of it as like a spectrum or scale, and these two paintings are at the extreme opposite ends of that scale, There's lots of other styles in between. So there's lots of different ways of painting, and we can choose something that suits us, suits our personality. This is the quote at the beginning. This is Henri Matisse, I guess in his studio with a palette and some brushes, and he did a lot of large scale paintings. So I guess that's why he has the step ladders there. Matisse, French artist, he grew up, he didn't seem to have any interest in art. His father, I can't remember exactly what he did, but it was some sort of businessman, manager, owned his own company maybe, that type of thing. His mother was an artist. But as I say, Henri didn't show any interest in art whatsoever as a child or early teenager. He was kind of encouraged, pushed, whatever, by his father into law. So he went off to Paris to study law, got himself a part-time job or something in a law firm, started studying in his spare time. But then he got sick and he got quite ill, and had to return to his family home to recuperate. During that time, sitting around with not much to do, just trying to get better, his mother decided to give him some paintbrushes, some paint, canvas, and she thought, well, at least he'd have something to do, and it's not physically demanding. So he started doing that, and he got really into creating art, even though he had never been interested in it before, never asked his mother to try art or anything like that. He just got into it, to the point where, and I think to his father's extreme displeasure, he decided to quit law and become an artist instead. His mother gave him some advice. The advice she gave him was along the lines of, do your own thing. Don't just stick to what is mainstream or what is traditional. Try different things, experiment, find out what interests you. For example, colors. Yes, the sky is blue, the grass is green, but you don't have to portray them that way. As an artist, you have the freedom to experiment and try different things. And he took up her advice, and as we know, he became, well, one of the early movements that he helped to found was the Fauvist movement. And if you've ever seen Fauvist paintings, you'll know that they certainly didn't stick to representational colors. You have purple trees and pink skies and orange grass and all kinds of things going on. Henri Matisse did collect some other artists' work. So he bought some paintings by Van Gogh, Vincent van Gogh. He had sculptures by Rodin. He had one or two paintings by Cézanne. So that's the kind of art that he was interested in. He was interested in the non-mainstream artists, if you like, the modern artists before modern art was really a thing. So getting back to his quote, creativity takes courage. It does. It requires a bit of courage to step out and do your own thing, even if other people don't like it. If you remember those two paintings I showed, the Jackson Pollock and the photorealist painting, a lot of the general public, if you like, the people who are not actively involved in art, they will, most of them, not all of them, but a lot of them will tend towards the photorealism because they see the skill that's required and they admire that. Whereas they look at the Jackson Pollock painting and they maybe think it was an accident, happened in an art studio or something. Somebody spilt some paint on a canvas. It doesn't require a huge amount of skill because they're not seeing it from an artist's point of view. They're not maybe aware of the compositional complexity and the skills required to create that feeling of sort of rhythm and harmony within a painting like a Jackson Pollock painting. So it does require a bit of courage to step out and do something different, do your own thing, especially if it is more on the Jackson Pollock end of the style spectrum. But it changed the way I was making art, and it opened up lots of new possibilities for me. Some more of these little drawings that I've been doing. I don't do as many of these as I do landscapes, but it's nice to have something else to do occasionally. It's just something different. And as I say, I've just sort of embraced my own way of drawing, my own way of doing things, and not too worried about what anybody else might say or think about them. These last three examples are the recent ones I've done. This is taking some of the old drawings and putting them through some, using a computer to add in some digital media, if you like. Adding in some false colors into the charcoal drawings. So it's something else I'm just experimenting with and playing around with. So maybe sum up, the main point of the video was, if you're struggling, if you're just getting into art, or whatever the reason for your struggles, and you're not happy with the way that you're drawing or painting, remember, it is your way of doing things and it's your art, and you don't have to do art that looks like somebody else's art. And there's many different styles and they're all equally valid. I think that idea is what sort of liberated me in terms of the early days of getting back into art. And if I hadn't come across that, I might have given up. So it is a powerful idea. This idea that art is a very broad thing. It's not a narrow thing, and it's not just about technical skills. There's lots of other things in there as well. So keep doing your own style of art. Do what interests you, the sort of subjects and the style that makes you happy, and that would be the best advice I can give. I don't know if it helps, but it certainly helped me. If you made it this far in the video, thank you for watching and listening, and hopefully see you again in next week's video.